Hello there, dear viewer, and welcome to the Elemental Builds with Belly and PCOutcast. Today we explore the element of air, and my entry is the ZEPHYR, a build named after my favorite bow and using one of my top 5 favorite combat styles, the combat archery. Everything is set up so that you can overrun every enemy and send them away with magic arrows, spells and shouts. High level, high health, high armor damage sponges will be particularly funny to deal with, because even though they can take quite a few hits, they will just constantly fly away, get prone, and their movement speed will deteriorate to the absolute snail speed. I had a long backstory for her, but it was a boring story, so let's cut it short. She used to be a mercenary in Hammerfell, specialized in hostage retrieval, very capable with her bow at an early age. She once saved the life of an Altmer scholar, which she wasn't very happy to do, as she hated the Thalmor and the Dominion, like most reasonable people do. But there was good money in it, and she was all about money. The scholar, however, turned out to be a very interesting person, very open-minded and very honest. She got to know him better because he offered good money for escorting him to an alien ruin in Cyrodilic. The more they talked during their travel there, the more respect she had for him. He would tell her quite honestly that yes, high elves can be pompous and often dangerous and act superior, but there is wisdom to be found there, like pretty much everywhere else. Before they arrived at the destination, her worldview would already get a little bit shaky, and the secrets they would soon discover would bring her the final epiphany. The wisdom of those ancient elves involving wind magic seemed to be tailored perfectly for her, as if she was meant to find them. The Altmer scholar, contrary to most quest givers, was happy to share those secrets with her, teach her the Aelid language and help her learn the air-binding magic. Perhaps in the end not everything is about money. Now we take a look at the list of necessary mods, and we need Vokrii, that offers many great alterations to the archery tree supporting combat archery. Evenstar for the speed bonus from the Steed Stone, Morningstar for the Redguard sprint bonus, as we will sprint away from the enemies a lot in the early game especially, Elemental Destruction for the wind spells of course. Apocalypse was used to put Whirlwind Cloak in Okato's recital. The build has very little magicka, so it is darn convenient to have this spell for free. Nevertheless, we are going to need Secret of Arcana Black Book power, so you may drop Apocalypse and simply accept that you are going to use Cloak sparsely, until your enchantments are good enough to significantly cut the costs of destruction spells. Elemental Arrows by Fuma will be great, and obviously the compatibility patch for Vokrii and Elemental Destruction is a must. For the looks, we have Beyond Skyrim Bruma, with the addition of Cyrodilic Armors mod, which makes the beautiful Mithril armor much more accessible by integrating it into leveled lists. Also, Cloaks and Capes. Without it, our bow and arrows will hover like 5 inches away from our back, which I think is worse than a bow clipping through the cloak. A tough choice anyway. For the race we have a Redguard, although a Khajiit would be a wonderful choice too, because they have a bit of a movement speed in Morningstar. Running around enemies is the deal for the combat archer. I still think, since sprinting will be responsible for most of our stamina spending, the Redguard is a choice that allows for more health in our attribute spread, which is 4 points of health per 1 stamina. The lack of magicka is not that much of a problem since we only need the Whirlwind Cloak every combat and 1 dual cast of Tempest for the entire playthrough. Well, no, not exactly just 1 cast of Tempest. Actually, you will switch Tempest for some other spells sometimes, but very few casts. You can definitely pull this off with just Secret of Arcana and no magicka. That was the point. Oh, Belly, really, just move on. Which you can do as soon as you have the spell and the Secret of Arcana. And as mentioned, the Standing Stone is the steed, which gives us a significant movement speed advantage, which combines nicely with movement speed perks in light armor and the pinning shot perk in archery, which slows down the enemies. For the main skills, we have archery, light armor, destruction, speech, enchanting and smithing. Yes, I know, 2 crafting skills. I am horrible and boring, oh no, oh. Anyway, it's hard to make a successful combat archer without crafting, especially for legendary difficulty, so it's either this or honed metal. Some unperked alchemy should be also considered, especially that with high enough enchanting you can make an amazing fortify alchemy set and then brew yourself some decent fortify archery and fortify destruction potions, as well as some slow poisons, which are just always useful against living enemies, at least even with no perks in alchemy whatsoever. In archery, take every single perk. The leftmost perks designed for long distance archery like far shot and impaling shot can be taken last. They will become more useful when all your shouts are unlocked and your wind spells are improved with perks, at which point you will constantly be putting some distance between you and your enemies. Pretty much everything else is mighty useful from the get-go, even the Hunter's Discipline, as we don't use any melee weapon and so we will use up tons of arrows, so recovering them from corpses will help you keep your damage high. Needless to say, quick shot and ranger are combat archers' best friends, especially with the ZEPHYR, which fires 30% faster by itself. Seeing as each shot casts a spell and you can use elemental arrows like gust arrows that fling enemies away on impact, the fire rate is the centerpiece of your combat style. Gore, which deals extra damage against enemies if they power attack, as well as pushes them back a little bit, is stupidly easy to abuse with both ranks of steady hand, meaning even if you stand still, which you should normally avoid, you will still be quite safe from high damage attacks. And as mentioned, pinning shot applies a stacking movement speed penalty on hit, which can make high level enemies utterly useless against you. But most importantly, we want both ranks of Lion's Arrow, of course, which imprints a spell into our bow, so to say, when we dual cast said spell out of combat. Since I had little magicka, I would imprint spells only after using the Secret of Arcana Black Book power. Against mages and dragons, a powerful shock spell like Chain Lightning should be used, and the expert wind spell of Tempest will do well against anything else. In light armor we take the entire rightmost branch, including Evasive Sprint and Untouchable. Windrunner and Agility provide us with extra mobility, and Evasive Sprint uses this mobility for defense, halving all incoming damage when we sprint. This perk is one of the very few things to help us against elemental damage, and is the main reason to go with the Morningstar Redguard. Of course, we also need light armor fit and training and keen senses, because a silver circlet goes incredibly well with the mithril armor, and I wouldn't have it any other way. In Destruction we take the Shock and Wind perks up to and including the Crackling Sphere. On the right, take 1 rank of Rune Master, mostly useless to us, but we need Hethhod's Disjunction and Elemental Barrier to improve our cloak spells. Crackling Sphere will increase the chance of targets being flung away with our wind spells. Considering the range of the wind cloak will be greatly increased by Amplified Destruction enchantment and sometimes dual casting with the Secret of Arcana in effect, we will get quite a lot of flinging. Levitating low health enemies with shock spells can also be quite useful, as they can't really move when levitated, which gives you even more more opportunity to mess them up with your rapid-fire bow. The aforementioned enchantments increase the health threshold required for the levitation to kick in, so in the late game you will see a lot of enemies floating helplessly above the ground. Early to mid-game though, your main use for the skill will be to dual cast the Gust spell until your magicka is depleted and then switching to bow. Only with Okatos Recital and or Secret of Arcana and Lion's Arrow you will get more power out of it, so the skill may increase rather slowly. Consider paid training. In speech, take all the shout enhancing perks except Scald. As you would expect from a combat archer, slow time is one of the greatest friends. Increasing its duration and or potency is always the way, and the Vazulan will give us a chance to use some other shouts while slow time is in effect. And for the crafting skills we want steel, smithing, dwarven smithing and arcane blacksmith. All serve the single purpose of fully improving the ZEPHYR, which is a complete death machine with such improvement and the elemental arrows. Also, in enchanting, take enchanting mastery and armor enchanter. Nothing more than that seemed necessary. These two were taken to make sure the character does well on legendary difficulty. Here is the list of item effects. First and foremost, we need our ZEPHYR, which is very fast and you can use it to a devastating effect with your tremendous movement speed advantage and the slow time shout. Also, everybody is constantly flying away from you, so the chances you will ever get hit are fairly limited. I used two types of elemental arrows with my ZEPHYR, obviously the gust arrows for yet another chance to send them flying into the air. I know my wind spells do the same already, but they only have a random chance to do it, meanwhile these arrows are guaranteed to do it. Against mages and dragons I used shock arrows, possibly with the chain lightning spell released from my bow via the Lion's Arrow perk. 3 slots of Fortify Archery may seem a little bit excessive, but it makes just enough difference to make it a decent choice for the legendary difficulty. On Master or lower, definitely replace one of these with some Fortify Magicka. Keep in mind, this is an endgame set. Before you have your shouts, your Secret of Arcana and your Lion's Arrow, definitely go with a Circlet of Fortify Magicka and some other item of Fortified Distraction, so that you can have some means of using your spells. A Necklace of Resist Magic could also be necessary, at least for certain dungeons before the Evasive Sprint perk and Full Become Ethereal Shout are obtained. Speaking of which, here is the list of spells and shouts. It's all already explained and shown in action, so no point in repeating myself. Do remember, though, that without Okatos Recital, you may need to replace one of the enchantments with a Fortify Magicka or Fortified Destruction effect, please. Become Ethereal will be your way of avoiding Dragon Breath, so use one word unless you are absolutely sure you won't need to use the shout later in the same fight. Cyclone Breath is here just in case some enemies still refuse to fly. If your cooldown timer resets due to the Vazulan perk when slow time is still in effect, you can send forth a very slow tornado and see if you can kill the flying enemies before they can reach the ground, which sounds fun. Okay, that's all, dear viewer. Wind guide you, subscribe, like and comment, and go watch PCOutcast's build as well, and subscribe to him, and send him my regards, and we shall see each other again. Bye bye. Yeah.
Jugglers and singers require applause. You are a gamer.